You ever seen someone humiliated so badly in front of a crowd that the entire place went silent? Not out of mockery but because what happened next turned the whole atmosphere upside down? Like 1 second everyone's laughing and pointing and the next they're frozen, pale-faced like ghosts just brushed past them? Well, let me take you to the moment it all began. It was a Wednesday afternoon, one of those warm spring days where the city buzzes with life, but not too much. People move about like they have purpose, but still slow enough to savor the sunlight and breeze. And right in the middle of that quiet kind of busy, in the center of Hartfield Square, a public plaza known more for food trucks and indie musicians than drama, a scene unfolded that nobody could have seen coming. The girl's name was Meera Halden. 22. Quiet. Bookish. The type to blend into the background if you weren't paying attention. She worked part-time at a small second-hand bookstore 2 streets away and spent the rest of her time studying psychology at Hartfield University. She wasn't the kind to make a scene. In fact, if there was one consistent truth about Meera, it was that she avoided conflict like her life depended on it. So imagine everyone's surprise when at 2:17 p.m. sharp, Meera stood on a raised platform right near the central fountain and was accused of theft. Publicly, loudly, and cruelly. The accuser? Lydia Rowe. Now, Lydia wasn't your average mean girl. She was the kind of person who weaponized charm. President of the student council, daughter of a local real estate tycoon, always perfectly dressed, always smiling like she knew a secret no one else did. Her words carried weight not because of their truth but because of the power behind her name. And that day she made sure they echoed far and wide. There she is. Lydia's voice sliced through the murmur of the crowd like a blade. That's the girl. Meera Halden. I saw her take it with my own eyes. People turned. Phones came out, screens glowing as cameras flicked on. Some recognized Meera. Most didn't. But when Lydia Rowe pointed her manicured finger and said you were a thief, well, people listened. Meera froze. She wasn't holding anything. Not visibly. She had her usual worn-out satchel, some textbooks tucked under one arm and a coffee cup in the other. Confusion flickered across her face and then something deeper, a flash of fear. Lydia stormed up, heels clicking furiously against the stone tiles. Behind her were 2 campus guards and a cluster of students. Lydia reached into her coat pocket and held up a silver bracelet. Delicate, obviously expensive, glinting in the sun. This was in her bag, Lydia declared, waving the bracelet for all to see. I left it in the council room 20 minutes ago. It's a family heirloom. I don't know how she got in there, but I saw her sneaking out. The silence that followed was heavy. Someone muttered, "Whoa." Another whispered, "Isn't she the girl from the bookstore?" And then came the laughter. Quiet at first, then louder. Nervous, cruel. That laughter that grows not because people believe, but because they're uncomfortable, and mocking someone weaker is easier than thinking. Meera didn't say a word. She didn't defend herself. She didn't even cry. She just looked at Lydia, eyes wide, lips parted, as if trying to make sense of what reality had suddenly become. As if she was searching for the camera in a hidden prank show, the twist that would make it all funny again. But no one stepped out to say gotcha. And Lydia? She smirked. The guards stepped closer. One of them asked to search Myra's bag. And that's when something happened. Something that would become the moment everyone in Hartfield would remember. Seconds later, everyone turned pale. Because as the guard opened Myra's bag, what fell out wasn't just the silver bracelet. It was something else entirely. Something that made the crowd's chuckles catch in their throats like glass. A small velvet box, deep maroon, clearly aged, fell open as it hit the ground, and inside was a ring. But not just any ring. It was the Halden crest ring. And if you don't know what that is, let me fill you in. The Halden family was a mystery wrapped in scandal years ago. Old money, old power, whispered names in country clubs and underground papers. The kind of people who lived in estates so far out of town they barely existed on Google Maps. That ring, a black diamond surrounded by curling vines of gold, was believed to be lost. Or stolen. Or buried with the last heir in a closed casket funeral 10 years ago. Yet here it was. In Myra's bag. Someone gasped. Is that? Another person said, that ring's cursed. Cursed. That's the word that did it. The shift. The crowd didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stared. Even Lydia's smile wavered. Her confidence cracked just a little. Because anyone who knew the stories knew that ring wasn't just a symbol. It was a warning. And the last person to touch it without permission? Let's just say, he didn't have a happy ending. The guard didn't touch it. Instead, Meera bent down, slowly like her bones were suddenly made of lead, and picked up the ring. She didn't put it on. She just held it, turned it over in her palm. Then she looked up at Lydia. And smiled. Not a warm smile. Not even a fake one. It was the kind of smile that made people feel like the temperature dropped 10 degrees. The kind that said, I know something you don't. The kind that made Lydia take a step back, despite herself. I didn't steal anything, Meera said quietly, voice steady now. But you just might have stolen something from yourself. Nobody knew what she meant. Not yet. But they would. Soon. Very soon. Because what happened in the days that followed would unravel lies buried for decades, turn allies into enemies, and reveal that Meera Halden, quiet, bookish, invisible Meera, wasn't just another student. She was the storm no one saw coming. You could taste the fear in the air. It was faint at first, an aftertaste clinging to silence, but as Meera Halden walked away from the fountain, cradling that infamous ring in her hand, it spread like wildfire. Lydia Rowe didn't follow. The guards didn't stop her. Nobody moved. It was as if they all became statues in a museum that had just witnessed something ancient, forbidden, alive. The sound of Myra's footsteps on the stone tiles seemed louder than they should have been, echoing, pacing slow, deliberate. Her head wasn't bowed. Not anymore. She wasn't crying. Wasn't trembling. She walked like she had somewhere to be. Somewhere important. Like the ring had reminded her who she was. And maybe it had. Because 3 blocks away, tucked behind the bookstore where she usually spent her quiet afternoons alphabetizing novels and sipping black coffee, there was an attic no one knew about. Not even the owner of the bookstore, old Mr. Plinth, who hired Meera because she reminded him of his daughter before she vanished. The attic had been Myra's secret sanctuary since the day she stumbled upon it. Inside, the air smelled like cedarwood and aged paper. The floorboards creaked like they had secrets of their own, and the windows let in golden light that always hit the same way, like it was trying to tell her something. This was where she went now. She closed the door behind her and pulled the thick velvet curtain over the glass, shutting out the world. The ring was still in her hand. She hadn't let it go since the moment it fell from her bag, though she couldn't remember putting it in there. And that was the terrifying part. She sat cross-legged on the worn rug in the middle of the attic and placed the ring on a thick, weathered book. The book had no title on the cover. Just a symbol burned into the leather, a curled snake biting its tail, encircling a tree with roots and branches intertwined like a knot. It had belonged to her mother. Or so she believed. Meera had no memories of her mother. Just whispers in dreams and a single, faded photograph. Her aunt, no blood relation, just a kind woman who took her in, said Meera had been dropped off at her door at the age of 5 with nothing but a suitcase and a note. Protect her from the blood that calls. As a child, she thought it was poetic. Dramatic. Now she wasn't so sure. The ring pulsed against the leather just slightly. As if sensing it had come home. Meera took a breath. Shaky. Why now? She whispered. The attic didn't answer. But something did. A low creaking. From behind the bookshelf near the far corner. It wasn't wind. Wasn't settling wood. It was rhythmic. Like footsteps. She stood. Moved toward it slowly. Her fingers brushed the edge of the shelf and then, like clockwork, it shifted. Not much. Just enough to reveal the sliver of a hidden doorway, covered by books that had long collected dust. She stared. This wasn't new. Not in the sense of being built recently. The wood behind the shelf was old, older than the rest of the house. Older than anything she'd seen in town. She could see symbols carved faintly into the frame, almost identical to the ones in the book under the ring. Something inside her stirred. Not fear. Recognition. She pushed. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. She hesitated for a heartbeat. Maybe 2. Then she reached for the ring. Slipped it onto her finger. And the second it touched her skin, the lights in the attic flickered and went out. All of them. Every bulb. Every strip of sunlight. Gone. Only the ring glowed now. Faintly. Not enough to see by but enough to follow. She stepped down. The stairs groaned beneath her, dust swirling around her like ghosts being shaken from sleep. The deeper she went, the colder it got. Until finally, after what felt like descending forever, her foot touched stone. The space opened into a small chamber lit by nothing but the glow of the ring on her finger. And on the walls? Paintings. Dozens of them. Each one a portrait of someone with the same eyes as her. Some older. Some younger. But all with a certain sadness in their stare. A knowledge. A warning. In the center of the room stood a pedestal. And on it, a journal. Black leather. Just like the book upstairs. Meera stepped forward. Opened it. The first page was blank. The second, held a date. October 14th, 2003. Her birthday. She flipped the page. If you are reading this, it means the ring has chosen you. The curse is awake, and they know where you are. Meera's heart pounded. She kept reading. You are not what they think you are. You are not powerless, but you are hunted. Always have been. The Halden name was buried for a reason. Not for shame, but for protection. Because the bloodline carries a truth the world forgot. The ring flared brighter. Something shifted behind her. She turned fast, but there was nothing. Then the voice came. Oh, whispery, but unmistakably real. You shouldn't have taken the ring. It wasn't angry. It was warning her. And yet, she hadn't taken it. It had found her. Suddenly, light filled the chamber, not from electricity but from the walls themselves. The portraits glowed faintly. The eyes of each ancestor lighting up like embers. She looked around, breath caught in her throat. And that's when she saw it. One portrait near the far wall had been defaced. Scratched out. Burnt. The nameplate beneath it read, Lydia Rowe. Meera's blood ran cold. What the hell was Lydia's name doing here? Before she could process it, a sharp knock echoed from above. Not in the attic. Outside the bookstore. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. Meera rushed up the stairs, through the attic and down into the main shop. She peeked through the front window. 3 black cars parked across the street. Suits. Sunglasses. Earpieces. Government? No. Worse. Family. She recognized one of the faces. Uncle Garrett. Dead 10 years ago. Buried next to her mother. His skin was too pale, eyes too dark. And yet he stood there. Alive. Waiting. And smiling. It was impossible. Meera knew it. But there he stood. Uncle Garrett. Tall. Imposing. Dressed like he'd stepped out of a funeral, jet black suit, pressed to perfection. His hands rested calmly behind his back. The sunglasses covered what she remembered were cruel, penetrating eyes. Except, Garrett had died 10 years ago. The casket had been closed, the funeral hush-hushed. Her aunt had whispered once, through a cracked glass of wine and a stormy night, that his death wasn't natural. That the Halden blood had caught up with him. And now he was standing on the sidewalk like he had never left. 3 other figures flanked him. 2 men, 1 woman. All in black. All motionless. Like chess pieces. Like shadows that had forgotten how to blend in. They didn't knock again. They didn't have to. Meera backed away from the window. Her hands were shaking now. Not from fear, but from something else. Something underneath her skin. Something waking up. The ring on her finger was hot. Not burning but close. She didn't know what compelled her to move back upstairs, but she did. Something about the chamber below the attic had given her more than information. It had opened a door inside her mind. Her blood buzzed. Her vision sharpened. Sounds seemed louder, crisper, like reality was suddenly in high definition. She reached the attic, yanked open the secret passage again, and hurried down the stairs. The chamber glowed faintly as if the walls remembered her. Meera moved to the portrait again, the one defaced. Lydia Rowe. The name haunted her now. Why would Lydia's image be here, among the Halden lineage? Unless Meera didn't want to believe it. But the more she stared at the scorched canvas, the more the pieces fit. Lydia wasn't just a wealthy girl with a mean streak. She wasn't just powerful, she was connected. Perhaps more than anyone suspected. The journal was still on the pedestal. She flipped more pages. Some were blank. Others filled with meticulous script, notes, diagrams. Her mother's handwriting, Meera guessed. It was fluid, confident, like someone who had seen too much to ever fear the unknown. Page 89. That's where it changed. Lydia Rowe is not a stranger. She was born of a different branch, one split from ours over a century ago. One that embraced the curse instead of hiding from it. The Rows took power by force, by dark bargains, by blood spilled under new moons. We Halden chose silence. Chose exile. We paid in grief but not in souls. Meera's knees buckled. She sat on the cold stone floor and kept reading. If she has returned, if the blood signs are stirring, the war is not over. They will come for the ring. For her. For all of it. A sound echoed from upstairs. A creak, not from the front door but from inside the bookstore. They were in. Meera slammed the journal shut. No time. She rose, turned, and for a second, just one heartbeat, saw something in the far corner of the chamber. A mirror. She hadn't noticed it before. Oval, old, its frame twisting like thorns around bone. And in the reflection? Herself. And someone standing behind her. But when she spun around, there was no one there. Only shadows. The mirror pulsed once, then cracked down the center. She ran. Back through the passage, into the attic, down the stairs, two at a time. She didn't make a sound. The bookstore was quiet, but the kind of quiet that comes after a storm, not before. Books lay scattered across the floor, knocked over with surgical precision. No glass was broken. No doors forced. Whoever came in had keys and knew where to look. She crept toward the front counter and peeked over. They weren't in the front room yet. Meera slipped behind the employee shelf wall and into the storage closet. She'd hidden there once as a child, playing some version of hide-and-seek with her aunt. It smelled the same. Thus, old wood. And something faintly floral, lavender maybe, something her aunt used to wear before she vanished without goodbye. Meera pressed her back to the wall, breath shallow, and closed her eyes. She needed time. Time to think. Time to understand what the hell was going on. But she didn't get time. Because the door creaked open slowly, and a voice, low and smooth like oil sliding across marble, drifted in. "You shouldn't have worn the ring, Meera." She opened her eyes. It wasn't Uncle Garrett. It was the woman. Tall. Elegant. Ice blonde hair pulled tight into a twist. Her skin pale like porcelain, almost translucent. Her eyes were black. Not brown, not hazel, not any human color. Just black. Void of white. Unblinking. "Who are you?" Myra's voice came out steadier than she expected. "I am what your family tried to erase." The woman stepped into the closet, not touching anything, not moving anything. Like gravity didn't apply to her. Like she was borrowing space instead of taking it. "You don't know what that ring means," she continued. "You don't know what it can do. But you will. Soon." Meera didn't move. The woman cocked her head. "I could take it now. Tear it from your hand. Break the bones if I have to." Her smile never reached her eyes. "But where's the fun in that?" And with that she turned. Walked away. Not a threat. A promise. Moments later, the door to the bookstore closed. The air shifted. They were gone. Meera didn't move for minutes. When she finally emerged, the place looked untouched. No sign of intrusion. No shadows left behind. Except a single note on the counter. Written in elegant, slanted cursive. "See you at the gala." Oh. Myra's hands curled into fists. Lydia. She was behind this. All of it. And suddenly the memory of the fountain came rushing back. The humiliation. The laughter. The silver bracelet that hadn't been hers, but was planted. Planted to distract. To draw eyes. To force her to wear the ring in public. So they could see if it responded. So they could confirm she was the real heir. They'd been testing her. The game had started. And now they were calling her to the next move. The gala. She knew the one. An annual charity event Lydia's family hosted at the Rowe estate, an estate older than the city itself. Grand, hidden behind tall iron gates and tall tales. Invitation only. Lavish. Dangerous. She'd never been invited. Until now. Meera stared at the note, fire igniting in her chest. If they wanted her to come, she would. But she wouldn't be coming as a pawn. She was a Halden. And she was done hiding. There's something strange about preparing for a war you didn't know you were born into. Meera stood in front of the dusty mirror in her bedroom above the bookstore, staring at her reflection like it was someone else. The ring on her finger glowed faintly, a steady heartbeat she couldn't silence. She had changed, not outwardly, not yet, but something deep inside had begun to crack open. And she could feel it. She'd never been to the Rowe estate. But stories about it were like urban legends whispered at sleepovers and half-drunken campus parties. The gates were cast iron, taller than two men with tips like spears. The halls were rumored to be filled with portraits of ancestors who didn't quite look human, and there were entire wings of the mansion sealed off for generations. Some said it was haunted. Others said it was worse, it was watched. But Meera wasn't going to be scared off by rumors. She needed answers. And if Lydia Rowe wanted a performance, she'd get one. Meera found a long black dress her aunt had hidden in the back of a cedar chest. It smelled like old perfume and forgotten dances. Elegant, simple, and strangely tailored to fit her perfectly, as if someone knew this moment would come. She didn't have heels, but boots would do. And around her neck, she fastened the crescent-shaped pendant she'd worn since childhood. She never knew what it meant, only that it had been found in her suitcase when she was 5. Tonight she was going as herself. And as someone she was still learning to become. The cab ride to the Rowe estate took 45 minutes. Past the university. Past the forest that stood like ancient guards on the edge of town. The road turned from pavement to gravel. Then from gravel to silence. And then she saw it. The gates. They loomed before her like jaws, opened wide and waiting. The cab driver didn't speak. He didn't even look at her. He just let her out, and as soon as her boots touched the ground, he sped off like something was chasing him. Meera approached the gate. It opened on its own. Beyond it, the mansion rose like a blackened crown atop a hill. Tall, winding towers. Gothic architecture so sharp it could cut the sky. Every window glowed golden. Music drifted on the wind, soft, classical but slightly off, as though played on an instrument that was just a little out of tune. She walked up the path. No guard stopped her. No one checked invitations. It was as if they'd been expecting her. The front doors opened and warm light spilled out. Inside, people moved like dancers in a masquerade, gowns, tuxedos, glimmering masks. Eyes peeking out with more than curiosity. Meera was the only one unmasked. And somehow, that made her the most dangerous person in the room. A waiter glided past with a tray of champagne. She took a glass but didn't drink. Instead, she watched. Lydia was near the grand staircase. Surrounded, of course. Laughter, flirtation, admiration all orbiting her like she was the sun and they were helpless planets. She wore crimson. Not red, crimson. A color meant to draw blood. Her eyes locked with Meera's the moment she stepped further into the hall. The crowd quieted like someone had pulled a string. Lydia stepped forward. "Look what the shadows dragged in," she purred, voice silky and echoing in the marble chamber. Meera didn't flinch. "I got your invitation," she said. Lydia tilted her head. "Didn't send one. But I suppose the ring did the inviting for me." Everyone was watching. No one spoke. Meera's fingers curled tighter around the stem of the champagne glass. "What do you want from me, Lydia?" Lydia smiled, but her eyes stayed cold. "What? Nothing. Maybe. You've been walking around like a question mark your whole life, Meera. It's time you understood what kind of sentence you're a part of." Meera stepped closer. "So teach me." There was a flicker of surprise in Lydia's expression. Then amusement. "You really want to know? I deserve to." Lydia turned without a word and ascended the staircase. Meera followed. Up the stairs. Through a hallway lit by flickering chandeliers. Past guests who suddenly stopped smiling as she walked by. And then into the east wing. Lydia pushed open a set of heavy double doors and led her into a chamber unlike anything Meera had seen. The walls were covered in sigils, glowing faintly in hues Meera couldn't name. The ceiling was domed glass, showing the night sky above, where stars moved unnaturally fast. A stone table sat in the center of the room, and on it, an old book bound in flesh-colored leather. And surrounding the book were 6 black candles, all lit, though there was no flame. Lydia walked to the table. "This is where it began," she said softly. Meera stayed back. "What is that?" "The ledger of blood," Lydia replied. "Every family member. Every pact. Every betrayal. This book knows who you are. It knows your fears. Your memories. Even the ones you don't remember." Meera's throat was dry. "Why show me this?" "Because I want you to see what you are," Lydia said. "Before they do. They. The ones coming for the ring. For your blood. For all of us." Lydia's voice dropped lower. "I may be cruel, Meera. But I'm not stupid. They don't want just you. They want everything." Meera stepped closer. "Then help me. Tell me what they are." But Lydia didn't answer. Because the candles had just gone out. All 6. Snuffed in perfect silence. The room chilled 10 degrees in a second. And the book? It began to flip its own pages. Faster. Faster. A blur of names and dates and blood-red ink. And then it stopped. On a single page. Meera Halden. Beneath her name, awakened. Chosen. Hunted. The final line bled into the page as they watched. They're already inside. A scream echoed from the hall. Then another. The party downstairs erupted into chaos. Meera ran to the door, Lydia close behind. The hallway was shifting, walls warping, doors slamming, the chandeliers swinging like they were in a hurricane. Shadows crawled across the marble like spilled ink. Downstairs, the guests weren't guests anymore. Some were screaming. Others were laughing. And some were on their knees, faces covered in ash, eyes turned completely black, chanting in a language that bent the air around them. Lydia grabbed Meera's arm. "We're too late." "What are they doing?" "They're breaking the seal." "The what?" Lydia's voice trembled. "The protection spell cast by the Halden line. It's the only thing that kept the blood rights dormant. And you." She turned to Meera. "You reactivated it. When you put on the ring." Then the ground shook. And the mansion itself breathed. A low, groaning inhale from beneath the foundation, like something ancient just woke up. And it was hungry. Meera gritted her teeth. She had started this. But she wasn't going to run. Not now. Not ever again. Meera didn't blink. Couldn't. The Row mansion groaned again, low, guttural, like it was in pain or anticipation. The chandeliers in the hall exploded one by one, glass raining down like shimmering knives. The scent of smoke and iron filled the air, thick and metallic, like blood poured through the walls themselves. Below, chaos had erupted into something more primitive. There were no longer screams, only snarls, chants, and the twisted sound of skin against marble as bodies dragged themselves across the floor, eyes rolled back, fingers bent at impossible angles. Meera pressed her back against the wall as Lydia whispered something in a language she didn't recognize, sharp, clipped syllables that crackled against the air. The stone beneath their feet pulsed like it had a heartbeat of its own, vibrating with energy that shouldn't have existed. "The seal's gone," Lydia muttered, eyes wide. "The chamber's awake." "What does that mean?" Myra's voice cracked. "What chamber?" Lydia looked at her like a teacher finally forced to speak the unspeakable. "This mansion is built on the bones of something ancient, something your ancestors tried to lock away. The Rose, we fed it, worshipped it, for power, for wealth. But the Haldens sealed it centuries ago when they realized what it really was. And now," Lydia exhaled sharply, "now it wants out." A shriek cut through the upper corridor. Both girls turned sharply, just in time to see one of Lydia's followers stumble into view. A woman in an ivory mask, now cracked, her dress torn and bloodied. "There, inside," she gasped, but before she could finish, something yanked her back into the shadows. Meera ran to the stairwell, ignoring Lydia's warning behind her. She needed to see, to understand what she was up against. The grand ballroom below looked like something from a nightmare now. The partygoers were no longer human. Some of them had split open down the spine, and crawling from inside were creatures Meera could barely comprehend, thin, long-limbed, with faces that were smooth and eyeless, skin like wet parchment, bodies that moved like spiders made of bone. Others were still mid-transformation, choking on their own voices as shadows poured from their mouths like smoke, curling into the ceiling beams. In the middle of the chaos stood him, Uncle Garrett, not wearing sunglasses now, and his eyes? Gone. Just sockets burning with a silver fire. He looked directly at Meera, though there was no way he could see her. "You brought the ring," he said calmly, his voice echoing without sound. "You completed the circle." "What circle?" Meera shouted. But Garrett didn't answer. Instead he raised one hand. And the floor beneath her feet cracked. She leapt backward just as the tile shattered completely, revealing an ancient staircase spiraling down into the blackness beneath the house. Something down there breathed again, louder this time. A wheeze of something enormous and long buried. "Meera." Lydia's voice snapped her out of her trance. "We need to go." But Meera didn't move. She stared at the stairway, at the darkness curling upward like tendrils. She felt it calling to her. Not in words. Not in voices. In memory. Suddenly, images exploded in her mind, flashes like a film reel unraveling. Her mother, kneeling in the same chamber beneath the bookstore, slicing her palm and letting blood drip onto a sigil. Her aunt burning a set of letters in a fireplace, whispering prayers to a moonless sky. A younger version of Garrett, screaming in a forest, surrounded by black-robed figures, clutching something to his chest, a baby wrapped in white. Meera stumbled, clutching her head. Lydia caught her before she fell. "What did you see?" she demanded. I saw my mother. And Garrett. He took me." Lydia paled. "He didn't die. They told us he died, but he must have crossed over." "Crossed over to what?" Lydia's mouth was tight. "To them. The ones below." They turned together just as the walls began to shift. The architecture was warping now, bookshelves twisting into staircases, windows expanding into tunnels. Reality inside the mansion was unraveling like a badly sewn dress. And still the ring pulsed. Meera looked down at it. The gem was no longer black, it was red. Blood red. Glowing like an ember. Her heart thudded with it, sinking. It was no longer something on her. It was part of her now. She made a decision. "I need to go down there," she said. Lydia grabbed her wrist. "Are you insane?" "No. I'm done running. That thing wants me. And I want answers." Lydia hesitated. Then, to Myra's surprise, she nodded. "Then I'm going with you." The two of them descended the cracked marble stairway into the depths beneath the house. Each step echoed like a drumbeat. The darkness closed in, not like an absence of light, but a presence. Thick, pressing, watching. At the bottom, the corridor opened into a massive circular chamber. In the center was a pool, not of water but of something black and shimmering like liquid night. Floating above it, suspended in the air by nothing at all, was a massive stone structure shaped like a spiral cage spinning slowly. Inside it, something moved. It was enormous, slumbering. And wrapped around it were chains, glowing with the same symbols Meera had seen in the attic. Lydia's voice was barely audible. The Heart of Thorns. The what? That's its name. What it calls itself. Meera stepped forward, eyes fixed on the thing behind the chains. It opened an eye. Just one. Golden, vertical slit like a reptile. But endless. Ancient. And then, it spoke. Not aloud. Not in sound. But in Meera's mind. Blood of Halden. You have returned. Meera trembled. What are you? What you were made to silence. What your ancestors feared. I'm not a god. I'm not a demon. I am older. I am hunger with memory. And you are the final key. Chains rattled. The eye pulsed. Meera fell to her knees. What do you want from me? To be free. The ring burned white-hot. And behind her she felt Lydia's breath hitch. Because Garrett had followed them down. But it wasn't Garrett anymore. His body was only a suit now, held together by whatever it was that wore his skin. His smile stretched too wide. His fingers were too long. You're just in time, he rasped. Lydia stepped forward. She's not yours. But Garrett only laughed. She never was. She's its. And then the spiral cage began to turn faster. And the chains started to break. The sound of the chains snapping was not like metal breaking. It was deeper. It rang through the stone floor, through the bones in Meera's legs, all the way into her chest. It sounded like something final, like a lock that had never been meant to open had just been forced. The spiral cage above the black pool shifted violently, creaking and groaning, spinning on its own axis. Inside, the massive creature stirred. Meera could only make out fragments of it, horned limbs, eyes where there shouldn't be eyes, ribs that seemed to move like wings. It was both beautiful and horrific, like a symphony composed of screams and lullabies. Garrett, whatever had become of him, stood at the edge of the pool, arms raised as if in prayer. His mouth moved, whispering something Meera couldn't hear. Beside her, Lydia whispered, "He's invoking the old rite." "What does that mean?" Meera's voice came out hoarse. "It means he's trying to bind the heart to you. Use your blood to finish the awakening." Meera turned, her heartbeat slamming into her ribs. "How do we stop it?" But Lydia didn't answer. Because she was already stepping forward, pulling a curved blade from the folds of her dress, one etched with runes that shimmered faintly in the chamber's light. Meera stared at her. "What is that?" "Halden steel," Lydia said grimly. "One of the last blades forged by your ancestors. It can cut through the veil, the layer between spirit and flesh. And you've had that this whole time?" "I was waiting to see if you were worth saving." Before Meera could reply, Lydia rushed Garrett with inhuman speed, blade aimed for his heart. But Garrett turned, just slightly, and with a gesture sent her flying across the chamber. She crashed into the far wall with a sickening thud and crumpled to the ground, motionless. "Lydia!" Meera screamed, starting toward her. But Garrett was already advancing. He didn't walk like a man. He glided. His feet barely touched the floor. His face was still his, but his eyes were wrong, filled with molten silver like someone had poured mercury into his soul. "You don't understand what you are," he hissed, voice layered with something beneath it, another voice deeper, older. "You were never meant to contain the ring. You were meant to become it." Meera backed away, but the ring burned hotter, and suddenly, images exploded in her mind again. But this time they weren't fragments. They were memories. Her mother, pregnant, standing at the edge of a circle of salt, chanting while shadows tried to claw their way inside. Her father, someone she'd never seen in person, tall, pale with hollow cheeks, begging her mother to run. Begging her not to finish the ritual. The day she was born. The lightning storm. The blood. Her aunt standing over the crib saying, "You have no idea what's inside her." And Meera as a toddler, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "No," she whispered. "This can't be who I am." Garrett raised a hand. "You don't have a choice." And then, the creature spoke again. But this time it wasn't only in Meera's mind. It filled the room. "Let me in. I will give you power. I will give you understanding. I will give you vengeance. You will never be weak again." The ring exploded with light. Meera screamed, not from pain but from something else. Her body was changing. She could feel her heartbeat sinking with the spiral above. She could feel her bones vibrating with energy not meant for the human world. Her eyes burned. Her fingertips trembled. She looked up at Garrett and saw him. Saw through him. He wasn't her uncle anymore. He hadn't been for a long time. The thing inside him was old, hungry, and desperate, and scared of her. Meera stepped forward, her voice layered now, just slightly, echoing like the walls around her. "I'm not your key," she said. Garrett bared his teeth. "You don't even know what you're rejecting." "No," Meera said, her eyes glowing bright now. "But I know what I'm becoming." She raised her hand. The ring flared. Garrett moved to strike, but the blade Lydia had dropped was now at Meera's feet. She picked it up. It felt warm, familiar, like it belonged to her. Garrett lunged. Meera ducked under him, pivoted, and drove the blade straight through his chest. His scream wasn't human. It wasn't even animal. It was dimensional, like something tearing a hole in the fabric of reality itself. The black pool thrashed. The spiral spun violently. Chains snapped one by one, screaming as they unraveled centuries of protection. And then, Garrett fell. Not like a man. Like a curtain dropping. His body crumpled, and what spilled out wasn't blood. It was smoke. Black, thick, alive. It screamed once, then vanished into the ceiling like a flame being sucked back into a candle. Meera stood over him, the blade still in her hand, her chest heaving. The ring glowed steadily now. And the heart of thorns stopped moving. The spiral froze. The eye blinked once, and then closed. The chamber fell silent. The pool darkened. And the final chain held. Meera staggered backward, the weight of what she'd just done crashing over her like a wave. She dropped the blade. Fell to her knees. Lydia groaned from across the chamber, rolling onto her side. "You did it," she coughed. "No," Meera whispered. "I only delayed it." She looked up at the spiral. "It's still in there." Lydia crawled closer, her dress torn, blood on her lip. "Then we need to seal it again. For good this time." Meera nodded. But deep inside her, a new truth had already taken root. She had touched the heart. And it had touched her back. She wasn't just part of the bloodline anymore. She was the line. And the war was only just beginning. The house didn't shake anymore. But it breathed. Quietly. As if sleeping after a long, cruel laugh. Meera leaned against the cold stone wall, blood drying on her knuckles, the Halden blade resting beside her like a loyal animal after battle. The spiral above the pool had stilled, the final chain humming like a faint warning, a heartbeat reminding her the thing inside wasn't gone. Only dormant. Lydia sat across from her, her once elegant gown now torn and blood-stained, strands of blonde hair stuck to her forehead with sweat. Her eyes, still sharp, hadn't stopped watching Meera since the blade went through Garrett. "How long?" Meera asked. Lydia blinked. "How long what? How long have you known what I am?" Lydia didn't lie. "Not now. Since we were 10, she said. "The night of the equinox. You don't remember, do you?" "No," Meera said. "I don't remember most of my childhood." "You had to forget," Lydia said. "Your aunt made sure of it." Meera narrowed her eyes. "Why would she do that?" "To protect you," Lydia said softly. "Because if you remembered what you really are, the heart would have reached you sooner. The others would have found you years ago." There was a silence between them, thick and humming like electricity. Meera stood slowly, brushing off the dust from her dress. "You need to tell me everything. No. No riddles. No cryptic curses. The truth." Lydia nodded once. "You're not just a Halden. You're the last Halden-born heir. The last one who carries the pure seal, the full mark. The others were diluted. Split across time and generations. You were born straight from the line that made the original pact to seal the heart. And the ring? It's the key," Lydia said. "But it's also the door. Your blood powers it. You don't just wear it, you are it." Meera looked down at the ring. It no longer pulsed red. Now it was silver. So, watchful. Like an eye that had momentarily closed. She turned away, pacing toward the steps that led back into the house. "We need to leave," she said. "This place, it's not done collapsing." Lydia didn't argue. They moved in silence, climbing out of the spiral chamber, back through the cracked marble corridor, up into the corridor of shifting walls and bleeding mirrors. The mansion was quieter now, the chaos having passed through like a fever dream, but the bodies remained. Some lay twisted, empty husks. Others were whole, untouched, frozen in time with expressions of agony carved into their faces. One guest, still wearing a half-mask, stood in the middle of the ballroom, unmoving. His chest rose and fell in slow, deliberate breaths, as though he were locked in some kind of trance. Meera and Lydia didn't speak as they passed him. Outside, the night air hit like cold clarity. The mansion behind them loomed, quiet, its windows dark, its gates wide open. The moon overhead was low and yellow, hanging like an omen. They reached the road. No car. No phone signal. Nothing. The silence stretched as they walked through the forest lining the long gravel path, branches cracking underfoot, owl calls echoing through the black. And then, Meera stopped walking. Lydia turned. "What is it?" Myra's voice was low. "That memory you mentioned. When we were 10. Lydia's face changed just slightly. "What about it? Tell me what happened." Lydia hesitated. "You really want to know?" "I think I need to," Meera said. "I think that's the piece I've been missing." Lydia looked away. Her voice, when it came, was filled with something Meera hadn't heard before from her: regret. It was summer. Our families met at the old estate. Back before the schism between the Rose and Haldens became final. Our parents thought maybe we could break the chain through unity. Through friendship. So they put us in a room together, surrounded by talismans and bindings, hoping you and I would form a bond strong enough to resist the heart. Myra's breath caught. "We were just kids." "That's what they thought made it pure," Lydia said bitterly. "But they underestimated your connection. You reached out to me and something else reached back." Myra's skin went cold. "What do you mean?" "You touched the heart. Just for a second. Through me. It burned through every sigil they'd placed. Nearly tore the roof off the place. I passed out for a week. You forgot everything." Meera stared at her. "But why didn't they tell me? Why hide it?" "Because if you remembered that you could channel it, you might be tempted to use it." "And they didn't want another war," Meera murmured. Lydia nodded. "Exactly." They kept walking. Eventually, headlights appeared in the distance. A single truck rumbling down the road. Meera flagged it down. The driver, an old man with more wrinkles than hair, rolled down the window and stared at them with narrowed eyes. "You girls walkin' from the Row place?" he asked. Meera nodded. He gave a low whistle. "Damn thing always draws trouble. Hop in, I'll get you out of the woods." They did. The truck smelled like tobacco and pine. Meera didn't mind. She was too deep in thought. Too busy processing. The ride was quiet. Until the driver spoke again, eyes still on the road. "You see the sky tonight?" Meera looked up through the windshield. The stars were shifting again. Like they had at the mansion. Like someone was rearranging them. "Used to be, stars told us things," the old man said softly. "But lately I think they're trying to warn us." Lydia gave Meera a sharp glance. He dropped them off at the bookstore just before dawn. The building was untouched. But Meera didn't need to go inside to feel it. Something had changed. Something in her. She turned to Lydia. "What do I do now?" Lydia looked at her with something close to respect. "Now, you find the others." "What others?" "The ones like us," she said. "Scattered. Hiding. Some forgotten. Some sleeping. But you'll know them when you see them. They'll feel like fire you've touched before." Meera looked down at her ring again. The silver had begun to fade. In its place, gold veins spiderwebbed beneath the surface. Something was happening. The heart might have gone dormant. But she wasn't. The bookstore was exactly as she left it. But it felt different. Meera stood just inside the door, the early morning light casting long amber lines across the floor. The scent of old paper, lavender, and ink was familiar, comforting even, but the silence? It was loaded. Not peaceful. Expectant. The kind of silence that waits. Lydia closed the door behind them, her breath fogging up the glass briefly. She looked worn, her movements slower than usual. But her eyes never stopped moving. Always watching, always calculating, even now. Meera peeled off her jacket, set the Halden blade carefully on the counter, and stared at the spiral pattern carved faintly into its handle. The same spiral from the cage. From the heart. The symbol kept showing up, over and over, in places no one else seemed to notice. Ornate windows, old sidewalk tiles, book bindings on forgotten shelves. "We need to start drawing the map," Meera murmured. Lydia raised a brow. "What map?" "The one they didn't leave us. The one we'll have to build ourselves," Meera said. "Of the others like me." She walked up the back stairs into the attic. The air shifted as soon as she crossed the threshold. The journal still sat where she left it. The ring pulsed faintly as she approached. Meera opened the book again, turning past the pages she'd already read, deeper than she'd dared go before. Past bloodlines, pacts, and ancient entries written in Latin. And then, something new. A page that hadn't been there before. Her name at the top again. Beneath it, the path of the fifth flame. She blinked. Lydia appeared at the doorway. What is it? Meera turned the book toward her. Lydia's lips parted in disbelief. The fifth flame, that's a myth. Everything we've dealt with so far was supposed to be a myth, Meera said. So maybe it's time we stop calling them that. She read the passage aloud. When the fifth flame awakens, it will not burn alone. It will draw the ash-born, the hollow-eyed, the crow-touched, and the mirror blood from their slumber. When the five walk the earth, the gate will tremble. Lydia went pale. That's a summoning, she whispered. Not a prophecy. What do those names mean? Meera asked. They're titles, Lydia replied. Given to each bearer of a bloodline that still holds ancient power. My family row was once part of it. Before the betrayal. Which were you? Lydia's jaw tightened. The hollow-eyed. Meera studied her. That's not in the book. Because I was marked, not chosen, Lydia said quietly. They branded me to use me. But I was never meant to carry the full power. Then who are the rest? Lydia stepped forward, flipping to the next page. Symbols appeared, one beside each title. A crow's feather wrapped in wire. An empty mask. A black eye bleeding from its corner. A cracked mirror. And the spiral flame. Meera traced the flame. It's me, she said. The fifth flame. Lydia nodded. Meera sat on the floor, legs crossed, the journal in front of her, the ring now softly pulsing with golden light. We need to find the other four. Lydia sighed. You don't even know where to start. I do, Meera said. And she did. She didn't know how or why, but the moment her finger touched the cracked mirror symbol, something clicked in her mind. A location. A face. A boy with white eyes and a mirror tattoo on his throat, standing in an abandoned churchyard. She saw him. Like a memory that wasn't hers. She looked up at Lydia. There's a church. Near the edge of the river cliffs. St. Dandridge. There's someone there. Lydia narrowed her eyes. That place burned down 15 years ago. It's still standing in my head, Meera whispered. And she stood. The walk to St. Dandridge took most of the day. It was miles outside the city, along forgotten roads and crumbling paths, through woods that were too quiet and wind that never stayed still. Lydia came with her, though she never asked her to. And when the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting everything in gold and violet, they found it. St. Dandridge. Still standing. Mostly. The steeple had collapsed and ivy had eaten most of the stone. The stained glass windows were shattered, but the iron door remained intact, worn with rust but unbroken. Meera pressed her hand to it. The ring flared, and the door opened on its own. Inside it was cold and vast. Moonlight spilled through the broken roof. Pews lay in ruins. The altar was blackened with old fire, the scent of ash still faint in the stone. But in the center of it all stood a boy. No older than 20. Thin. Pale. Short white hair. A long coat draped over narrow shoulders. And on his throat, a tattoo, a shattered mirror, the crack cutting through his skin like a scar. He turned when they stepped inside. His eyes were completely white. No pupils. No irises. Just frost and blindness. But he saw them. I've been waiting, he said. Lydia reached for her blade. Meera put a hand on her arm. The boy smiled. Don't worry. I'm not possessed. Just cursed. What's your name? Meera asked. They used to call me Jonas, he said. Now they just call me the Mirror Blood. Meera took a cautious step forward. You see things? He nodded. Everything. Especially what's broken. She looked at Lydia. This is the second, she said. Jonas tilted his head. You're the flame. I am. He stepped down from the altar, his boots crunching on broken glass. Then we don't have much time. Why? Jonas raised his hand. And every mirror in the church, shattered though they were, began to whisper. Soft at first. Then louder. Like voices leaking through cracks. And all of them said the same thing. They are waking. Meera stared into the largest shard. And she saw him. Garrett. Alive again. Rebuilt. But not as himself. As something worse. Something wearing his face like a mask. The same silver fire now crackling through his veins, his mouth split with too many teeth. And behind him, others. Not human. Not anymore. Their eyes glowed with colors no living thing should have. Jonas dropped his hand. The whispers stopped. Myra's mouth was dry. What are they? The keepers, Jonas said. Sentinels of the heart. When you refused the bond, it fractured. Now they've been unleashed. They'll hunt the 5. They'll burn the earth to find you. Meera's hands curled into fists. Then we find the 5 first. Jonas looked up and smiled again. Good. Because the next one, she's already running. The fire was already dying when they found the village. Meera stared at the rising smoke in the valley, a long dark coil twisting into the sky, smudging the stars. The faint smell of burned wood mixed with something else, sweet and metallic. Blood. They stood at the edge of the forest, the abandoned church behind them, the long grass whispering at their ankles. Jonas adjusted the thick collar of his coat, tilting his head toward the smoke. She was here, he said. I saw her. In the mirrors before they cracked. Lydia didn't speak. She hadn't said much since they'd left St. Dandridge. She moved like someone waiting for a blade to fall at any moment, and not sure if she'd dodge it or catch it. Meera stepped forward, her boots squelching in soft mud, the air colder now than it should have been. Her ring pulsed gold again, a slow rhythm, one she was learning to understand. She's the crow touched, Jonas said. You'll know her by the eyes. They're black, not in color and intention. You'll feel them before you see them. Meera kept walking. They crossed into the remnants of the village, stone homes with collapsed roofs, garden beds overgrown and wild. A fire had swept through recently, but it was surgical. Not wild. Not chaotic. Like it had targeted specific homes, left others untouched. There were no bodies. No survivors. Just silence. Lydia finally spoke. This wasn't random. Jonas nodded. They were looking for her. Meera turned toward an old well in the village square. Beside it, etched into the stone, was the spiral. But this time it was crossed out with a deep slash. A warning. She's not trusting anyone, Meera murmured. She thinks we're part of them. Wouldn't you? Lydia said. And Meera couldn't argue with that. Then, a sound. Faint. Like something scraping bone across stone. They all turned. From the edge of the broken chapel near the edge of the village, a girl stepped into view. Young, maybe 17. Skin pale, lips dark as charcoal, hair in wild, uneven braids that had been cut at sharp angles. She wore a coat made of stitched feathers, black, with hints of iridescent green and blue that shimmered when she moved. And her eyes. They weren't just black. They reflected blackness. Like obsidian pools swallowing the light. She held a long rusted staff in one hand, wrapped with talismans and tiny bones. A crow perched on her shoulder, unmoving. Jonas stepped forward slightly. That's her. The girl didn't speak. Just stared. Meera raised her hand slowly, showing the ring. We're not enemies. We're the same. The crow squawked once loud and sharp. And the girl moved. Fast. Not supernaturally, but with intent. She crossed the distance between them in seconds, her staff swinging low toward Jonas's knees. He jumped back, barely avoiding the blow. I don't believe in same, the girl spat. Meera stood her ground. We're trying to find the 5. Find or bind? She snapped. Because there's a difference. And the last ones who came here didn't come with questions. They came with fire. Lydia stepped forward now. We're not them. The girl's black eyes flicked toward her. And you're hollow-eyed. I remember that mark. I know what your family did. They tried to stop the heart, Lydia said. The girl sneered. They fed it first. Meera raised both hands now. What's your name? A long pause. Then, Riven. The crow croaked again. Jonas whispered, she's telling the truth. That's the name I saw. Riven's staff lowered slightly. You're the flame. I am. Riven took a step back. Prove it. Meera frowned. How? Riven slammed the butt of her staff into the dirt, and all at once, the shadows of the trees around the square twisted upward, forming a ring. The air chilled. The ground darkened beneath their feet. Walk through the circle, she said. If you survive it, the heart hasn't claimed you. Lydia drew her blade. This is a trap. No, Jonas murmured. This is old magic. This is truth. Meera didn't hesitate. She walked straight into the circle of shadows. And the world shifted. The village vanished. She was standing in a version of the world that wasn't real, but felt too real to deny. A reflection, a memory, a test. The sky was red. The trees were black, leafless. The air tasted like ash. Before her stood herself. But twisted. Her eyes were silver like Garrett's. Her skin was cracked with golden veins. And the ring on her finger burned like a star. The other Meera smiled. You're not strong enough, she said. I'm getting stronger. You're afraid of what that power will make you. I'm not afraid anymore. The other Meera tilted her head. Liar. Meera stepped forward. You think you can stop what's coming? The echo said. I'm not going to stop it, Meera said. I'm going to survive it. And I'm going to tear down every piece of it from the inside. The ring on her real hand flared. The reflection hissed and shattered, breaking like a mirror into 1,000 sparks. And the world around her faded. She blinked, stepping back into the village. The circle was gone. Riven stared at her. Nodded once. You're real. Jonas exhaled, shoulders slumping with relief. Lydia sheathed her blade. We don't have much time, Meera said. The keepers are already moving. We found 3. There are still 2 more. The Ashbourne. And the one even the book doesn't name. Riven turned toward the far hill. Then you need to see this. They followed her to a ruined bell tower overlooking the valley. From there, the night stretched in every direction and far in the distance. Fires burned. Not wildfires. Beacons. Rows of them. Circles. Spirals. Geometric patterns glowing in the forest. Markings. Jonas paled. Those are summoning glyphs. Massive ones. Someone's waking the old powers faster than we can find the 5, Riven said. They're not hunting you anymore, Meera. She turned slowly. They're calling you. The firelight etched shifting shadows across the faces of the 4. Meera. Lydia. Jonas. Riven. They stood on the ridge overlooking the valley as the glyphs blazed below, massive, intricate symbols carved into the forest with terrifying precision, each one pulsing with energy no human hands should have touched. They weren't just sigils. They were invitations. Or worse, doors. They're summoning something, Jonas murmured, eyes wide, hands trembling. Or someone. Someone like us? Meera asked, though she already knew the answer. Jonas slowly shook his head. No. Not like us. These glyphs are written in the tongue of the keepers. The language used in the rites of waking. This is a ritual. A calling. A calling for what? Riven asked, voice sharp. Lydia stepped forward, jaw tight. The 5th. The one the book wouldn't name. Meera clenched her fists. Every page in the ancient journal had offered a glimpse, a warning, or a prophecy. But only the 5th figure had been erased. A black smear over the parchment, even in a book that had somehow written its own pages for her. They call her the Forgotten, Lydia whispered. Some texts claim she's not truly human. That she's what happens when the heart dreams. Riven spat into the grass. Poetic nonsense. If she's out there, we find her. We decide if she's friend or enemy. And if it's enemy? Jonas winced. You'll what? Hit her with your stick. Worked on you, didn't it? Barely. Enough. Myra's voice cut through the tension like the Halden blade through smoke. She looked at the 3 of them, firelight dancing in her eyes. We don't survive this unless we're united. No bickering. No infighting. We're marked. That means we carry a piece of this war in our blood. Whether we like it or not. Riven's crow flapped its wings once as if agreeing. Then what's the next move? Lydia asked. Jonas pointed to the western edge of the valley. There. That glyph, it's still incomplete. The others are already burning, but that one's waiting. If they're trying to summon her, that's where the final ritual will be. Riven narrowed her eyes. Or where she already is. They didn't hesitate. They moved fast. The forest thickened as they approached, branches clawing at them like fingers in the dark. The glyphs glowed through the underbrush, humming softly, matching the beat of Myra's ring. Every step closer made her feel lighter and heavier at once, like gravity was fighting her, while something inside her begged to run faster. And then, they saw her. At the center of the unfinished glyph, standing alone, barefoot, wearing a simple dress stained with soot and ash, was a girl. She looked 15. Maybe younger. But the eyes. Those eyes. They were too old. Ancient. Empty. She stared at the ring on Myra's hand. Then at the others behind her. And her mouth opened slowly. You found me, she said. Her voice was like broken glass and lullabies. Jonas froze. She's not human. No, Riven said, staff rising. But Meera didn't draw her blade. She stepped forward. You're the Forgotten. The girl tilted her head. Is that what they're calling me now? You don't have a name in the book. I had one once, the girl said. But I traded it. Why? To survive. She knelt slowly in the middle of the glyph, pressing her hand to the dirt. The sigils beneath her skin lit up, crawling like veins across her arms and neck, glowing in eerie violet light. I've been waiting for you, Flame, she whispered. For all of you. I knew you'd come when the heart stirred. You're not going to hurt us? Meera asked. The girls smiled, and it was the saddest thing Meera had ever seen. I'm not the threat. And then she pointed toward the trees, where something moved. A shape, massive and robed in shadows, stepped into the circle of firelight. And behind it, dozens more. The keepers had come. And they brought their full host. The girl stood, the glow in her skin brightening, her small hands curling into fists. They think I'm still theirs, she said. They think they can finish the chain with me. Meera stepped beside her. Then let's break the chain. The 4 others flanked her. The circle of 5, finally complete. The keepers hissed. The glyphs began to burn brighter, humming with energy, their lines rising off the ground like threads pulled by invisible hands. And then, everything erupted. The trees exploded outward as the keepers charged. Meera raised the Halden blade, golden light burning from her ring. Lydia unsheathed her dagger, eyes glowing with silver. Jonas snapped his fingers, and the broken reflections in the puddles around them came alive, stabbing out in jagged shards. Riven's staff cracked the air, and every crow in the valley took flight, screaming downward like black lightning. The forgotten girl lifted both hands. And the glyphs screamed. Light, sound, flame, power, swallowed the forest whole. The 5 stood in the storm they had created. And Meera realized in that final moment of the battle's beginning, they were no longer hunted. They were no longer awakening. They were becoming.